I've long been an advocate for Chapter 2 being Fortnite's best chapter. Chapter 1 was fantastic, don't get me wrong. Chapter 3 was... let's move on. Chapter 4 was deeply flawed, but ultimately just kinda mediocre, and Chapter 5 has so far been inconsistent but promising. But Chapter 2? It was... perfect. 8 seasons, ranging from arguably the best seasons in Fortnite's history to some kinda mid but ultimately still hella fun times. And that map, oh that map, best we've ever had in my opinion. There were so many little details to find and spot. The POIs were some of the best this game has ever seen. I'm looking at you, Lazy Lake, the best city to date, don't at me. And even the landmarks were fantastic and well designed. I absolutely adored everything about this chapter, whether it was becoming an agent in an inter-syndicate war, surviving H2O, freeing the Zero Point, or fighting off a legion of cubes. There wasn't a single season during this time period that didn't hit for me, and for me, Fortnite Battle Royale just isn't the same anymore. So, what should I do? Let my precious memories stay that way? Let the past be the past and move on? Grow? Mature? Nah, you already know where I'm going with this. I brought it back! That's right, Fortnite Chapter 2 is back. I turned it into a late game arena playlist that you can play using the code. It all started with an idea. Most things do. Season OG really felt like Fortnite was back for me. So when Chapter 5 dropped and I played, well, this, it just didn't feel the same to me. It was a quality experience, don't get me wrong. In fact, I really liked the Chapter 5 island. But the new guns, the new movement, the new art style, they just didn't feel like Fortnite to me. So that got me thinking, well, how can I bring back that classic Fortnite feel? I could create my own Battle Royale, but why would people play that when Fortnite is right there? No, I had to go deeper. So I did some top tier research, and after a solid 45 seconds of Googling, I had my hands on the hype map for Apollo, the Chapter 2 map. Sure, I could do Chapter 1, but everyone and their dog has already done that. Importing that into Unreal Engine, suddenly I have a base. Slap a load of paint on there, and now this is looking familiar. Now, when it comes to points of interest, this is where it gets complicated. You see, Fortnite Creators Editions during Chapter 2 were lacking at best, and while we got some of the POIs over the years, a lot of the map's locations still have little to no representation here, and so are quite difficult to build. Thankfully, I have an appreciation for Chapter 2 that can only be truly described as autistic, so I've already remade a fair few POIs throughout the last year. First was Retail Row, which I remastered into Chapter 4 graphics with the Legacy toolset. That was fairly easy. Most of the retail section had prefabs I could use as a base, and the row part was well referenced online, so I could just demodernize it. Then came Risky Reels, a faithful remake of the original using bits and bops from various galleries. Thankfully, Risky was quite small in Chapter 2, so that didn't take all that long, and I could just chuck it in this project. Finally was Misty Meadows. Now this one did take a couple of days, but most of the buildings in Misty were adapted from Chapter 1's Happy Hamlet, which is in creative, so that was convenient. Now after dropping those three into the map, we have a great foundation. Using a mix of Epic's kindly offered prefabs and my own building with references, I recreated Steamy Stacks, Frenzy Farm, The Agency, Fort Crumpet, and Slurpy Swamp. Now, these POIs do use a lot of lovely assets that Epic didn't provide, so I had to get crafty for these. I used Fmodel to root through the Fortnite files, found the props, exported the model and the texture, imported the model into Blender and converted it into a compatible file type, imported the assets into UEFN, applied the textures and material, turned the model into a static mesh, and then turned that into a Fortnite asset, fixed the collision, and then finally placed it into the world. Yep, I did this every single time. This sign, these logs, this all went through that process, and it was totally worth it. Now, unless I wanted to be working on this project until 2042, I had to get some help. So I called in the ultimate duo of Fortnite remasterers, Milo and Issa. These guys are genuinely insane at their craft. They use private servers and some sophisticated tool I don't understand to literally grab POIs from Battle Royale and drop them into creative. I'd spend a few hours cleaning them up, fixing up missing pieces, replastering the wallpapers that had vanished with the move, etc. Issa helped me a lot with the stages. Well, it was pretty boring. These guys helped me to get even more POIs, from Lazy Lake to Holly Hedges to Pleasant Park. We worked together to ensure every detail was exact, from those pesky imported assets to building textures that aren't normally used in creative. We also got every single tree, bush, and rock 100% accurate to Chapter 2. These trees are actually customized color trees that I set out to look as close to the art style as possible, since the original trees have been slightly butchered in creative. A lot of the time it really looks like Apollo around Chapter 2 Season 7, and I love it. Throw in some landmarks like Camp Cod and Shantytown, and some of the small little details from across the island, and now we have our map. Now, this is where one slightly massive issue crops up. Epic doesn't allow Battle Royale Chapter 2 recreations, so what's the plan here? My first solution was to switch the genre. This is not available as a Battle Royale, nor even a playground to be safe. If Epic ever changes their mind, then sure, straight away. But I don't want to break copyright law just for some nostalgia. I had to get inventive and choose the perfect genre for this thing, and I settled on Late Game. Late Game is a playlist first introduced with Bugger's icon skin in Chapter 2 Season 7. It throws you straight into the endgame with a Battle Royale accurate loadout, and you fight to be the last standing. Essentially regular Battle Royale, but chop off the first 20 minutes of every game, and somehow even more sweaty. Late Game came back during Chapter 2 Season 8 and Chapter 3 Season 3, but it hasn't been seen since 2022, which is a shame because I find it to be one of the most fun LTMs. So I settled on a Late Game to bring back not just an awesome map, but an awesome fun playlist while on that map. Now, to be safe, we have to make this map a glorified POI gallery. So, no free roam, the Storm will take care of that, and some POIs have got to go. Sorry Salty, sorry Retail, sorry, wait, actually, I'm not sorry Craggy. Did anyone like Craggy Cliffs? And in one final move to cover my own ass, I also flung Pleasant Park 6 months into the fall season so it becomes this autumnal Plankerton-esque paradise. The final move was to make the map feel bigger than it was, so I talked to Angustius about adding HLODs, basically low poly meshes that generate far from the player so that the whole world isn't loaded at once, but it feels like it is. Now, why couldn't I just use Unreal's built-in tool to build them? Because it doesn't work. So we had to make a workaround. Ingo created a material that would emulate the effect of loading a HLOD from a distance, and I found an archive of Fortnite's 13.40 build. The benefit of building a Chapter 2 map is that, well, Chapter 2 had HLODs. Using Fmodel again, we found the location of the HLOD models, downloaded them and their textures, used Blender to convert the file type, and imported them into UEFN. Then I realized this would all be hidden by the Storm anyway, so it was kind of pointless, so I just cranked up loading settings to get everything within the zone visible and called it a day. I did get sweaty stands out of it though, so thanks Ingo. And so we enter the final stretch of development, and I had just a few more days until the planned release date. So I didn't sleep. I worked 18-hour days, 5 days in a row, and I do not recommend this, nor will I ever be doing it again. Hopefully. I built a dynamic loot pool that was random, but pulled from different pools depending on what season your POI was from. So if you're in Pleasant Park, you get Season 1 loot. If you're in the Agency, you get Season 2 loot, etc. Then I set up 30 random number generated devices and hooked them up to create a random POI selector system. I added teleporters above each POI so that every player would arrive at the correct location. That's 20 teleporters for 16 locations. That's a lot of teleporters. I designed some graphics and UI elements to spice up the experience, and the wonderful John Chiao created a stunning music pack to be the game's main theme, based on the moment the island flipped at the end of the Chapter 2 finale. I think it's beautiful and symbolic. The moment we lost this island becomes the moment we get it back and start creating new memories on it. Big Boomer, who is my usual render goat, created this stunning render under my instruction, which is a Chapter 205 version of this arena render from a few years ago. I stuck in a lot of fan service by only using Chapter 2 outfits, from Midas to Gubo to Fabio Sparklemane, the undisputed goat of the island. During the final night before launch, we spent about 5 hours playtesting just to make sure those random loot pools worked. They didn't. I think I published about 20 separate versions to try and make them work, and I was genuinely tweaking, so Doopy here stepped in, took one look, and instantly fixed the issue. Bruh. And so the map was ready for launch. The trailer premiere went up, despite replay mode being replay mode, and the time came. The map dropped, and people loved it. Over 1,000 players jumped in at once in the first 10 minutes. I'm still in shock at the positive reception that this had. This has got to be one of the best days in my career so far. We just spent hours playing and getting clips and having fun. Of course there were bugs. Lots of bugs. And the RNG system was a bit busted. It worked, but it was heavily weighted towards Pleasant, so the analytics are... But a few days later, I had fixed all the bugs, and I could finally sit back and watch the success I'd worked for hundreds of hours on achieving. It felt good. A new era where I could control the fate of my favourite Fortnite island and create fun experiences for thousands of players. So many ideas were filling my mind for updates and LTMs and events, and I was just so excited to get the ball rolling. And then Epic pushed an update that totally broke every large game in the ecosystem, smashed the Nintendo 3DS that was powering their servers with a hammer, and crippled my late game map for 3 weeks straight so that it completely dies out, possibly beyond saving. I'm gonna kill myself.